Hi, everybody. Welcome back. So happy to see you. We'll just let folks stream in. It is a beautiful day by me. It's just nothing but poppies. No, it is beautiful here in Southern California. Hope it's beautiful for you too. Hello, friends from around the state. Get comfortable. All right, so welcome. This is our 40th meeting of the Local Energy Resources Network. That's a lot of meetings. Thanks for sticking with us throughout all this. I'm Angie Hacker. I'm the statewide best practices coordinator with the California Climate and Energy Collaborative. I hope by now in April you are feeling like you're getting your feet under you in 2025 a little bit. I am so grateful for the weather and the flowers. I'm just grateful to know you all exist and are out there keeping on, keeping on. I want to invite y'all to introduce yourself over chat in whatever way you're comfortable with. Hey, depending on your mood, feel free to share something beautiful about spring happening in your neck of the woods, or really any source of inspiration that's keeping you uplifted, or both. I'm going to drop something that gave me a boost this week. It's going around lately, Maya Angelou's Continue poem. So that's a source of inspo for you. And please share your own. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. We've got a great meeting for you lined up. Okay, so as always, we are here for an hour plus a bonus to help you access opportunities that can help you advance your energy and local energy and climate goals. We're going to do what we normally do, which is start with Opportunity Roundtable. And then this one's kind of an interesting meeting. There's so much happening that we're actually taking some snack-sized bites of several topics rather than a one big featured speaker. And we're going to spend some time in a different conversation than we normally do. So the spotlights, we are joined today by a featured speaker from Strategic Growth Council. Is going to talk to us about affordable housing and sustainable communities, the grant that was just recently released. And we have somebody from the California Air Resources Board here to talk about the California Comprehensive Climate Action Plan and ways to help. You have one last chance to help inform things. I'm going to talk a little bit about an opportunity that can also help shape Proposition 4. And I'll share a little bit about ICLEI's recent update to its ClearPath tool, ClearPath 2.0. They've just launched it, and there's some opportunities to learn more. And then we're going to spend a little time in a facilitated policy update conversation. And so that is my cue to you to try not to fall asleep and try to stay engaged, because this one's interactive, and I'm going to try to crowdsource updates from all of you alongside of what I know about policies that will affect climate and energy investments here in California, but also other policies that I know some of you are tracking and are potentially concerned about, AB 306, 282, 286. So if you know more about that than I do, and you probably do, I'm going to invite you to share some thoughts as well. Okay, so that's the lineup for today. We're going to finish up with a little update on Seek Forum, and then if you can stick around for a 15-minute bonus breakout, that's where we chit chat informally and you can bring up announcements. Okay, so that's the plan for today. I apologize as always about this very messy slide, but this is our hyperlink cheat sheet for the month. This is our way to look forward into what's active and pending in terms of funding, other assistance and input opportunities. Sometimes we look back at the policy that's driving this investment, which, like I said, all that blue stuff we're going to talk about towards the end of the meeting. So we'll look a little bit more at GGRF, some other legislation, how Proposition 4 is going, how the state budget's going. So we'll hold that. Everything that's in blue here is stuff we're sort of holding for spotlights later. And then we're going to mainly cover in this slide the yellow highlighted items. Those are some active opportunities I'm going to just quickly share with you. And then, like I said, in the blue, either me or someone else, and then one of our speakers is going to share some updates. The first thing up top that I did want to mention is actually, before I get to funding, I want to just touch to, I know you all are tracking not just California policy issues, but federal. There are some links here that when you get these slides, and folks are going to drop it in the chat as well, There's been updates on the funding freeze at the federal level, things that are affecting EPA, DOE, FEMA, and a lot of other agency grants. I know so many of you are being affected by it. Please join us if this is something that you would find you would like to be in community and help each other learn more about. You can join our next huddle that's in yellow, sort of in the middle of the page. We've been doing now, they are monthly federal energy and climate funding updates and resources. We have these federal huddles, so you can join us, and it's actually been a really great way to get a little more information from each other about how the programs, whether the programs are continuing, what's being frozen, what's back. So we invite you to join us. One thing that happened this week that it might affect some of you was some of the staffing cuts that happened at HHS, Health and Human Services, that have affected the staffing for the LIHEAP program, which I know is a popular program affecting many of you working in the energy space. Okay, speaking of FEMA, up top here was something we were tracking, the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities grant, so BRIC grant. It's seeming pretty, I don't know if it's 100%, but it certainly was, the NOFA was pulled from the site, and now I think it's more clear that it's potentially being rescinded. So if you are working on that, I would double check and make sure that it's still worth applying for. Okay, we're going to get into better news. Don't worry. So here's one. I want to talk to you a little bit about the California Energy Commission's a grant they're calling Developing Next Generation All Electric Heat Pumps Using Low Global Warming Potential Refrigerants. That one is, there's $9.3 million from the CEC. The solicitation funds applied R&D that advances electrified HVAC technologies in existing residential buildings while minimizing the climate impact of refrigerants. Eligible projects must improve energy performance, reduce costs, and support beneficial electrification. So all public and private entities except local publicly owned electric utilities are eligible to apply. Projects must occur in California, and the deadline to apply is May 15th. There are different project groups that are up to different amounts. So there's a low, I think it's best to just go in here and look. Looks like you can get up to around $2 million for each of these topics. And so if this is something, maybe it's in your climate action plan to address potential refrigerants, this might be one for you. This one here that's next in blue, our friend Justin over at the Strategic Growth Council is going to spotlight for us in just a minute, so I don't have to, but I'm excited for you all to hear about that one, the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Grant. Let's keep going. So here's another one recently released by the Department of Conservation. This is the Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation Program, SALC. This is a round that is on capacity and project development. It's due in not due until July 5th. The purpose is to permanently protect croplands, rangelands, and lands utilized for the cultivation of traditional resources from conversion to non-agricultural uses. The capacity and project development grants specifically aim to expand organizational capacity to develop agricultural conservation and acquisition projects. You are eligible if you are a tribal government, nonprofit, or public agency. And it looks like there's two different tiers. One of them will be up to $100,000 to build organizational and financial capacity to develop agricultural conservation acquisition projects, and then up to $250,000 to applicants to expand existing organizational capacity to develop agricultural conservation acquisition projects and develop agricultural acquisition projects. So I know this one's a little bit of a stretch, but again, it might be something that is in your climate action plan to address agricultural lands. And if so, this might be one for you, or maybe you pass it on to your agricultural colleagues. Office hours and TA for that one is available. Okay, another one here from the California Energy Commission. This one is not due until July 11th. Getting a little bit of lead time here. This one's called Depot Charging and Hydrogen Refueling Infrastructure for Zero Emission Medium and Heavy Duty On-Road, Off-Road, and Specialty Vehicles. Okay, so this one has $20 million total available. There's a couple of different categories. Most of you or some of you would be eligible for category A, which is available to fund infrastructure for fleets owned and operated by California public entities such as cities, counties, and other eligible local governments. $10 million of the available funds is dedicated towards category A. So it's eligible to all public and private entities, but that category looks specific to a lot of you local governments. Purpose of it is for projects that will fund the deployment of charging, depot charging and hydrogen refueling infrastructure. And so more details in the link that is going to show up in the chat if this is something that you all are, if you all are interested. Okay, so let me just run through a couple of more things here. The ones in red is just my way of saying those I think are tenuous from the federal government and proceed with caution. I am hearing the codes, that there's been a little bit of silence on the codes, existing awards, and potentially the solicitation. It's not to say don't go for it, but proceed with caution. SIEGE, which is the program that was funded out of the EPA, the TICTAC did get some bad news, and I know is trying to advocate for itself in terms of its funding. And I am not sure, and we talked about this in the huddle recently, about the status of this solicitation that's still live on their website called Thriving Communities Grant for the Region 9 sub-awards. The application is still available. I just, again, proceed with caution. I don't want to hurt their chances of getting a lot of good applicants because they may very well be successful in their attempts to retain those dollars. Okay, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the ICLEI ClearPath 2.0 launch in a minute. I did want to mention, because we talked last month, that the CEC's HERA program, which is run by TechClean California and provides stackable single-family, multifamily electrification rebates up to $8,000, is now unpaused. It was paused just as they were trying to understand the federal implications, which is good news. And if we have everybody here from TechClean California, we'd be welcome to raise your hand and give your own update. I want to also mention, just under other assistance here, CEDMIC, our friends over at the Council of Efficiency and Demand Management, California Efficiency and Demand Management Council, are holding their spring symposium on May 15th. It's going to be in Costa Mesa. They're going to cover a lot of issues that are important to folks in the energy efficiency world. That will be in the chat as well, that link. I mentioned about our huddle. You're welcome to join us. We're continuing along for as long as it's useful to be tracking some of the federal developments that are affecting your work. And then quite a few input opportunities. So I wanted to say a big thank you to those that I got to see in person in San Diego and Los Angeles, where we came alongside LCI and Strategic Growth Council for the Catalyst convenings. It happened late last month. We're excited to be compiling all the input that we received from local and community-based organizations about how we can better coordinate with the state, and all of that's going to be documented and shared eventually. So more to come on that, and more to come on future regional convenings coming to an area near you. This next one in blue is going to be a featured spotlight from our friend Sarah Jo at CARB, so hang on to that for a minute. CARB also here has a survey out right now to develop a regulation for measuring and reporting embodied carbon in building materials. So there's two surveys there that if you are somebody who's working in embodied carbon in building materials, they would like your input. And then we'll talk a little bit in a minute about Prop 4, a survey out that I'm excited about. And so hang tight there. We have about 10 more days to help shape what Proposition 4, how it's deployed. And lastly, I just wanted to share that it's not for many of you on the line, but it's a good sign. The CPUC is sort of now the lead agency for the California State Solar for All allocation, which I think the award had been executed, and it looks to be like continuing to move forward. There are tribal listening sessions happening this month, which just tells me it's nice to see it continuing to move forward. So just a little bit of maybe positive news there. Oh, hi, Jeffrey. Do you want to give a quick update on HERA?
Sure. We are we are starting to process projects that were submitted before the deadline. I think it was February 26th deadline. And so haven't opened up for new projects yet. We're still bringing in back all of our subcontractors, but anticipate having it reopened to, for more income verification and rebate pre-approval submittals in the next couple of weeks, I would say.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, and you know what, folks, this is a roundtable because we're hoping that you help feed into this, all of this that we're trying to track. We don't get everything, so if you know of other opportunities that you want to share with folks like you, please drop it in the chat, and we will compile it for you. And I do want to ask that folks, if you know of philanthropic opportunities, those are harder to track, and I would invite you to drop those in the chat as well, if you're comfortable. Okay, well, thanks for that, listening to that. Like I said, lots going on. We're going to move into our spotlight segment now. If we go, there we go. So I am very pleased to stop talking for just a little while and pass it over to Justin DeWale. He is the program analyst with the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program, among another program that he works on for the California Strategic Growth Council. That NOFA was recently released, and I am going to highlight here that it's one of the biggest recurring emission reduction, place-based emission reduction sources of funding that we have here in California. So listen up, it's a big one. And I know it says housing, which isn't everybody's cup of tea, but there's something in here for you. So I invited Justin here to tell us a little bit more about it. So thanks for being here, Justin.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. Okay, so I am going to talk a little bit about our program, the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program, or AHSC for short. A lot of people call it ASIC, but so whatever your preference is. But so we are a program that is part of the California Climate Investments portfolio. So we fund infill housing projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions and vehicle miles traveled. And we do that through sustainable land use, housing, and transportation practices. And you can go to the next slide. This is where as Angie said, we just released our round 9 NOFA. And you can see that on our website at sgc.ca.gov. But this is kind of where we are in our timeline. Our no fund application opened last month, and the application is open now. And the deadline will be May 28th at 4 p.m. So you still have a bit of time if you plan to put in a round 9 application. Or if you're interested in applying for the future, we also offer TA services, which you can request from our website as well. So keep that in mind if you have a project or a potential project that you're thinking of. We offer no-cost TA services. Next, you can go to the next slide, sorry. We also have a couple of upcoming engagement opportunities if you want to learn more. So if you want to join us for one of our NOFA workshops coming up, I will note the Southern California one in LA is actually full up. It's at capacity. You could reach out to us to get on the waiting list, but we still have room in the Sacramento workshop, as well as, of course, the virtual workshop, which I don't believe will fill up. So do join us for one of those if you want to learn more. So our funding comes from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. That's where the California Climate Investments programs get their funding. And 20% of that funding from the GGRF goes to the AHSC program through the year 2030. We have awarded $3.8 billion to various projects across the state so far. For round 9, we have $775 million to allocate to various projects. We usually end up awarding between 30 and 40 projects each round, I think. So we have our program has some statutory targets as well as targets established by the Strategic Growth Council, and those are related to um, geographic distribution. So we have 8 geographic regions that we award at least one project to across the state. And we also have rural and tribal set-asides in our program. The maximum award per project is 50 million, and the minimum award is 10 million. And we have a $35 million cap on the housing components of the project and a $15 million cap on the transportation components. And for tribal projects, that's a minimum of 1 million per project. And I want to highlight this graphic here. This is kind of just like a graphic representation of the different components that comprise an AHSC project. So you have the housing itself, which has to be a minimum 20% affordable units. Then we fund bikeways, pedestrian walkways. We fund transit vehicles and transit service expansion around the housing. We fund urban greening components, transit components such as bus shelters, and we also fund programs such as resident and business anti-displacement programs. Okay, I touched upon this a little bit, but these are kind of the 4 components of the project. So you have the housing. We fund rental and home ownership projects. The vast majority of our projects end up being rental projects, but we do allow home ownership projects as well. Housing related infrastructure such as infrastructural improvements around the development that is needed. We also, and this is a recent addition, we also fund factory built housing components for projects that are factory built. So those are eligible costs as well, and on-site energy storage. Then we have the transportation components. The transit, the bikeways, the sidewalks, bike parking, bus shelters, urban greening, etc. One change from this round, we used to have 2 different transportation components. In addition to STI, we had what was called transit-related amenities, but we found those 2 categories to be not terribly meaningful, so we just collapsed them into one transportation category. And then we fund the programs, which I mentioned before, which can include a number of community programs that are available for the tenants and the surrounding community. And then we have 3 different project area types that we fund so that we can cover and serve, all types of communities across the state. So we have TOD, which tends to be in the densest urban areas are TOD projects. And those have to be covered by high quality transportation and a minimum of 30 units per acre. I'm kind of running out of time here, so I'll speed it up a little bit and we'll get to the end. I can finish up the last slide. And then the ICP projects, those tend to be smaller cities where those go. And then finally, the rural projects. And then, so these are some of our project threshold components. I won't go over all of them, but you can read more about them in our guidelines. And then we have a 100-point scale scoring criteria. So AHSC, as you probably know, is a competitive program. So we score competitively based on GHG reduction, narrative-based policy scoring, and then the final component, which is on the next slide, is quantitative policy scoring. And I believe we have about a 50% success rate every round. So these are kind of the components that make a successful AHSC project. There needs to be collaboration and partnerships. So an AHSC project, the applicant is usually a developer, but does so in partnership with a transit agency or a city housing department or the city government itself. I know many of you are from local government, so we always have local government involved in all of our projects, usually as a co-applicant and certainly a partner to the developer to make sure they can successfully build all of the components of the project. Yeah, on our website, please visit our website to learn more. We have lots of information there. You can see our past workshop recordings. You can look at all of our past awards to as early as round 3. We don't have round 1 or 2, but we have down to round 3 there that you can see. I also linked that. If you go to the top of the chat, I did provide a link to that, and you can check that out. So I will stop there and I will take any questions.
Thanks, Justin. So, you heard the word GGRF, Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, that's funded out of the cap and trade auction revenue proceeds. And just to highlight, we're going to talk about that in a minute in terms of policy. That's up for reauthorization this year. So big dollar programs like this, and somebody else in the chat, $775 million, I think, in this round, and $10 to $50 million projects. So these are big dollar stuff. I see another question here in the chat, and I do want to ask anybody if they're willing to raise your hand if you've had one of these awards before. We'd love to hear a little bit about your experience. But somebody here is asking for you, Justin, what are the definitions and thresholds of for a rural project?
Right. So yeah, a rural project is it has to be a minimum density of 15 units per acre versus the 30 units per acre minimum for the TOD projects. It has to be the requirements around the transit are a little bit different. So instead of 15-minute headways at peak times, I believe it's 30 minutes. But definitely fact check me on that. But the headway requirements are a little bit different. And this year we're requiring for the qualifying transit in rural, it has to be a fixed route. It can't be a flexible rideshare route. So we're really requiring that fixed route this time. Hopefully that answered your question.
Got another question. Fernanda Craig over at LA County asked to be unmuted. Hi.
No problem. It's just I don't have the hand raising feature for some reason. Could you talk a little bit more just about, I don't think I misunderstood or I didn't understand the difference between the loan versus grant on the AHD for rental versus owned.
Yeah, so it's for home ownership projects, you get a loan, and for rental projects, it's a grant. I honestly don't know why that is. Our partners at HCD would know better about why that is the case, but it is the case. And I can, if you'd like, I can provide our email here, our program email, and you can
That would be great because I
email.
find it
Yeah.
already, there's so many challenges with rental, and then that was very curious to me why it would be even more difficult for renters to participate.
No, it's not more difficult. That technicality shouldn't make it more difficult for anyone in particular. I think it probably has something to do with legal requirements around
Okay, I
how
see.
home ownership versus rental projects are funded. As I said, the vast majority of our projects that we fund are rental projects.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Fernanda. All right, we've got one more question here, then we'll move to our next speaker. So Dan's asking, has CEQA-based litigation delayed or stopped any of these awardings?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know. I don't know. I would not be surprised. Um, we we have a lot of projects that we've have funded that are still getting built. As you know, projects can take years. We're at round 9, but we're still, we have projects from round 3, 4, 5 that are still getting completed. So probably. I don't know for sure, but it is likely.
Yeah, I was talking to agency folks. It's not unlikely for any project to get hung up on one or the other kind of requirements. It's sort of a nature of the game, it sounds like. Thank you, Justin, so much. All right, y'all, I hope you heard that. If this is something that's at all applicable to you, or if you want to pass it along to your housing folks, then I hope it was helpful to you. And please join me in thanking Justin for his time and being here.
Yeah,
All
thanks so
right.
much.
Yes, okay. Justin's going to hang around more for a few more minutes too. If you have any other questions, he can handle that in the chat. And now we get to pass it along to another agency friend. So Sarah Jo from the California Air Resources Board. She's the international and federal advisor in the executive office and has been working on California's comprehensive climate action plan and is here to talk to you a little bit about an opportunity to help inform things. So thanks for being here, Sarah Jo.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much, Angie. I wanted to thank you all for being here as well, and wanted to give a little bit of an overview of the program that this plan fits under, and talk about this upcoming opportunity. So, the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan is part of a federal program, the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan that was authorized under the Inflation Reduction Act and is currently being run by the US EPA. Almost every state in the country is participating in the CPRG program, as well as a lot of metropolitan statistical areas across the nation, tribal nations, and territories. So in California, the state is participating in this program, as well as 10 MSAs or metropolitan statistical areas, and about half a dozen tribal nations as well. So we're all kind of doing this process in parallel. It's a 4-year program. It requires 3 reports over those 4 years. So we all submitted our priority climate action plans in March last year, and we are all working on our comprehensive climate action plans that are due later this year. And then at the end of the program, there will be a status report kind of describing the progress we've made under these plans. We've held a few of webinar or in-person meetings to gather some early feedback for our comprehensive climate action plan for the state of California. And our last public convening on to help inform this plan is going to be virtual on next week, April 17th, from 5 to 7 p.m. So if you're interested in joining, really hope that you can come. And we'll do kind of a short presentation at this top of the meeting, but really the bulk of the agenda is going to be kind of facilitated discussion. The Comprehensive Climate Action Plan will be economy-wide, so every sector, whether it's a source of greenhouse gas emissions or a sink for greenhouse gas emissions, will be represented in the plan. So we'll be talking kind of generally, and then we'll be talking sector by sector in the meeting. So if you're focused on just one sector, you're welcome to join. If you're interested in transportation and buildings and ag, we definitely encourage you to join. This is an opportunity to really span different sectors. The other things that will be elevated in the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan are the benefits of a comprehensive climate action. So reduction in air pollution is top of list. How those benefits will be distributed across low income and disadvantaged communities, workforce considerations. We'll also look at funding and how, whether federal, state, or local, how those sources can be leveraged to help achieve the actions in the plan. And well, there will be some other things that you would expect to see in a climate plan, a greenhouse gas inventory, targets, a lot of different actions to try to meet those targets. So if you're interested in kind of shaping how we will be thinking about and drafting this plan, really encourage you to come. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is, as part of this plan, we have developed a survey, and we've gotten a lot of responses to it so far, but we really want as many as we can get. It's a way to kind of elevate what is important to Californians about climate action. It's pretty short, it's anonymous. So I would encourage you all to both take the survey and to share it with anybody in your kind of community-based networks that might be interested in filling it out as well. I'll put a link to it in the chat in just a second. And I mean, that's it at a really high level. I would love to hear any questions or take any questions that this might raise for folks.
Thank you, Sarah. There was just an ask for the link, which has now been dropped in. It's making me have, I'm going to raise a question just since I have you here too. This is a network, these meetings, we like to talk about money. And this occurs to me that this plan, once it's final, could actually be the kind of thing that informs future policy, that could drive investment. What do you think about that? Is that true? To what extent is that true?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think it could. I think it can elevate, in our priority climate action plan, we really didn't talk very much about like big regulations. We talked about specific programs where money could be funneled in. And so I think we have that option in the comprehensive climate action plan as well, to have some of those discussion about California's ongoing regulations and, broader policy, but also to elevate different programs, different grant programs that are working well. What kind of tell their story a little bit. And to kind of drill down to the program and project specific level to spotlight. I don't think that we will have space in this report to share absolutely everything that's happening in the state, but I think this webinar is an opportunity for folks to say what's working well, and what deserves to be highlighted. And it's a way to kind of just show where there's momentum, and where if we don't have infinite funding, what's a good use of that funding. So I think it's a way to have a soft influence there. This plan is not connected to like a legislative process or any kind of specific process where there will be funding decisions made, but it can elevate and highlight things.
Great. I think I will come, and I'd love to see others there. I love my best practices. So when will this be? When will your final report be issued?
December 1st, later this year. So this is our last round of early feedback, but we'll have a draft, probably October, November timeframe for people to like make comments on as well.
All right. Well, Sarah, if you're open to it, you could drop any of your contact information in the chat here as well. Thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us and making sure everybody's aware of this opportunity to provide input. Okay. Well, we're going to keep trucking along here. Sarah's going to hang around in case more questions pop up in the chat for her. Let's go to our next slide. Okay, so this is another input opportunity. I know how busy you are, but I wanted to highlight some of these things that I really think might be worth your time. And this one on Prop 4, maybe you're like me and hung your entire mental health on this result of the election, but I'm just kidding. $10 billion in the climate bond was approved in November. They are in the process now of sort of determining how to deploy it. And so you have an opportunity here with this survey to help shape California climate bond funding. So there's $10 billion is going to be over the next 5 years. We'll talk in a little bit about how much of that we might see in 2025-26 state budget. And I have to say that I was pretty happy in the first public briefing that came out about Proposition 4, about how seriously they're taking some of what a lot of this network has been talking about in terms of the application burden and the attempt to try to streamline access to these funds through different means of deployment. So I'm excited to see what comes of it. I'll certainly be providing some feedback into the survey, and I believe there might also be more workshops coming, and it would just be nice if more voices like ours could enter into this sphere and help shape these funds so that they're as accessible to folks like you as possible and really help meeting your needs on the ground. I am hearing out of Prop 4 agencies already getting prepared for things like more money for the transformative climate communities and climate resilience center programs at a strategic growth council, among a lot of others. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the kinds of things that we might see funded in 2025-26 in just a moment here. But hopefully one of my Seek friends can drop that survey link in the chat so everybody could have access to it. You would have to provide your feedback by April 18th. Okay, next slide, please. And then you all know our friends ICLEI, and many of you are working on your climate action plans. And if you've been part of our state and local energy and climate coordination calls, SLEEK, we spent a lot of time talking about how difficult it might be to get your source data and to do your greenhouse gas inventories for your climate action plans. And we've been looking for solutions, and there are some emerging. Including, our friends at Berkeley working on a tool as well. But here's a tool that you all have heard about, I think, before, but now there's ClearPath 2.0. And so it was developed by ICLEI USA along with their partners at Climate View, and it's designed to address challenges and support local governments in turning climate plans into measurable, impactful action. So they've made some changes to the tool, and they're launching it, and they're inviting folks to attend a webinar to learn more. So that will be on April 29th. At 1 p.m. and hopefully somebody can also drop the registration link there in the chat as well. You're going to get all these materials afterwards as well, so don't stress. Some key features of the new ClearPath 2.0 tool include data-driven insights and a public dashboard for visualizing climate actions, real-time progress tracking to course correct when needed, economic decision-making tools to optimize limited resources for the greatest impact, and a connection to a network of U.S. local leaders facing similar climate challenges. Now, you might remember ClearPath used to be subsidized and free. I think it no longer is, but if this is something you're interested in learning more about, I would invite you to go to that webinar. Okay, so those were the spotlights. Are you feeling overwhelmed yet by all the things? I hope not, because I did want to spend a few minutes on this conversation around policy updates. And I really am hoping it's a crowdsourced conversation. I've given us an opportunity to get started here in a shared document that I was compiling I'm considering a working draft. But as you know, in the last few months, with things changing as rapidly as they have been, I've been really focused here in the LERN meetings on having more of a conversation around the policies that will help drive climate investments, especially here in California. And I really feel quite strongly that I want to make sure you're aware of some of the policy movements that are happening that could, that eventually when they go through the machinations, affect the availability and accessibility of climate and energy dollars, place-based initiatives like yours. And so I think what I'll do here, the link was dropped in the chat. You have access to this document because I actually want you fiddling around in here, if you will. And that means you could just go in and even redline some things and add some more information. I'm going to share my screen so I can kind of walk you through what's in this from a high level. And then I'm gonna pause between some of these policy topics and ask for your feedback and any other intel that you might have access to about just more information about any of these policies, or if you're aware of anything that might look like a collaboration opportunity or some sort of engagement opportunity. Like, how can folks be part as these policies roll out? How can they be part of it? So this is how it's organized. I have one section here that's on policies relevant to climate and energy investments, and it's split up into two categories. One is stuff that's happening to existing recurring investments, like what's going on in the new budget. So the California 2025-26 budget, we'll talk about that. I mentioned about the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund that is funded out of cap and trade auction revenue that is going through an early reauthorization, we believe, in 2025. So some information there. And that is $4 billion a year in funds. Some of those go to place-based emission reduction activities like yours, like what we just heard about, affordable housing and sustainable communities, and many, many other programs. And then energy affordability and the energy efficiency budget. I have a category of information here, although I'm not going to talk much about it because we just went over it at our last meeting, but it is an opportunity for folks to also crowdsource more information there. And then I have this other second category under policies related to climate and energy investments, and that's potential new investments. So as we see federal dollars start to rescind or be called back, and we're certainly in the continuing resolution and the federal budget probably not going to see a whole lot more in energy and climate for a bit. What other opportunities are there to identify new sources of dollars? Well, there is one piece of legislation on the table that's attempting to do that. And so that would be the California Climate Superfund Act that's been introduced in both the Senate, the Senate and the House, SB 684, and I believe that's actually AB 1243. I'll fix that. We'll talk about that. And then there's this other category of policies, and I'm putting it here even though it's not so directly funding related, which is kind of what we do here at LERN, but because it's been so top of mind for so many of you across the state that are concerned, I think, about the effects of some of these new moves, I think, towards streamlining and reducing red tape and trying to do rebuild and buildings maybe more quickly. And so I am not an expert on these things. I just have dropped very brief information about each of these things. But if you are somebody who's tracking AB 306, AB 282, or AB 286, it would be wonderful if you could drop additional information in there, especially about opportunities for folks to engage in that process. Maybe there's a workshop, if there's some kind of template letter that's going around. Those are the kinds of things that you all might have access to and can share with each other. Okay, so I'm going to stop for a second and just ask if there's questions about generally what we're trying to do with this document and in this discussion. Let's see here, I don't see hands up. And let's see here in the chat. Okay, I think everybody's sort of following along here, so thank you. All right, budget, an important one. We talked about it a little bit a couple months ago. So there was basically Governor Newsom has released his proposed budget for this next year back in January. There's a little bit of a positive balance after a couple of years of state budget deficits. Then it goes on to the Assembly and Senate, where they're going to refer it to their budget committees and consider it. Then there will be a May revise, and then there will be a final budget act, and that's expected by the end of June. So there's this moment right here. There's things still moving. And for folks that are engaged in that process, they certainly could be participating. I'm not sure how much of the folks in this network are tracking or participating in this process. So some of what we're hearing is that there are fund shifts occurring in this proposed budget, previously authorized climate spending from the general fund and the greenhouse gas fund. So the greenhouse gas reduction fund. So that's the GGRF. The LAO came out with a report that said that the governor proposes roughly $1.8 billion in discretionary cap and trade expenditures in 2025-26. And so there's a number of activities that were initially to be supported by the general fund, but then were shifted to the greenhouse gas reduction fund. So what you're hearing is a little bit of like, that's the language of like kind of backfilling for some things that might have otherwise been cut. There's a lot more detail, and if you're looking for sort of a spend plan or line item spend plan of what GGRF is going to look like in 2025, you can go to this link. LAO's office has offered an analysis. There's also an LAO analysis on how Prop 4 ends up showing up in 2025-26 budget. The Proposition 4 has $10 billion, of which 2.7 of that is expected to show up in 2025-26, including 1.1 billion in water-related programs and 325 million for wildfire and forest resilience. There's not a ton here in mitigation, but there is 323 million for public financing for clean energy transmission projects, but they're waiting on identifying staffing and other implementation details because there's a study pursuant to AB 3264, which some of you were following, which is really on energy costs. It proposes to shift 305 million in previously adopted or appropriated funding to Prop 4, and then 273 million from general fund and 32 million from GGRF. So you can see how there's like this mix, there's a lot of stuff happening between the budget, Prop 4 and GGRF. And, I think in general, the state's doing its best to try not to have to make painful cuts here and retain climate programs. Though I think there are folks who wish there was a little bit more additive, happening maybe in the new Prop 4 dollars. But there is some. Okay, so this is right here. If you're looking at my screen, what other information do you have? Do you know of anybody who's leading on any kind of policy engagement? Are there letters? Are there workshops? Are there something that others can participate in if they would like? This is the kind of thing that you can do more than I can do, but all I'm doing is sort of info sharing. I'm going to stop here in case anybody wants to say anything out loud if you are tracking budget, if anyone wants to add. Okay, folks are in listen mode, which is okay. There's a lot, there's too much. That's why we're here. We're trying to help at least get some stuff on your radar that we think might help. I've talked a lot already about the possible reauthorization of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which is funded out of proceeds from the auction of cap and trade allowances. There's a whole interesting, so this process has recently kicked off. There's something called the Joint Legislative Committee on Climate Change Policies that has had a hearing recently, and there's a whole background document talking about the status of GGRF, and there's an interest in early reauthorization or early consideration of reauthorization because I think they're trying to provide some market stability here. So there's going to be a lot of debate, even just about whether or not we do cap and trade in the future, and if so, are we changing this program substantially? There's a whole school of thought and crew of people that would probably like it to stay the same, and others that want to see it substantially changed. So I'm bringing it to you because I think this one is, like I said, Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund is like a $4 billion revenue stream that's recurring and is not subjected to the winds of politics, and an important one. And if you like seeing more dollars available for place-based emission reduction opportunities. So it's something that we all should probably be keeping our eye on, and as there are opportunities for engagement, letting each other know about that. So the Climate Center is one group that I know is following this, and they had a recent webinar back in February. They're talking about reforming California's cap and trade program. So that would be one thing that you can learn a little bit more about. I'm going to stop here in case anybody on the line wants to add more insight, intel, or opportunities related to this policy. You know what? I've been trying to get speakers. So we're going to talk when I'm done here, and I'm only going to highlight a couple more things about where you want us to try to identify speakers to really dive into some of this stuff at a future LERN. Okay, like I said, this whole energy affordability and the relationship with the energy efficiency budget, we talked about this a lot at the last LERN. You can get that recording here, and there's some additional information. I would love for folks to share with each other more information about some of the legislative hearings that are happening, letters, or other learning events. And then I'm going to pause here because I want to give a little space to anybody on the line who is tracking. I am going to get a speaker for the Climate Superfund Act. That will come, but I am interested in how much of a priority it is for you. So this is that potential new investment, and you can learn a little bit more about recently proposed legislation. It's kind of a tobacco settlement for climate. It would establish a new revenue stream. But here's where I wanted to stop. On these three policies, AB 306, AB 282, or AB 286, these have implications sometimes on local governance and control, and I want to stop here in case anybody in the call would like to share with others like you some of what's happening here, because I know there's some urgency around some of this and people are trying to get the word out. Well, I guess I mainly wanted to get it on your radar. There's one on residential heat pump systems, water heaters, and HVAC installations. There's one here on building regulations and state building standards. Folks here are, I know, concerned because there might be implications on local reach codes. And then this one here, the electricity mandate rate reduction, which will require the PUC to reduce the kilowatt per hour rate for electricity charged to ratepayers by not less than 30%. So, I'm raising it up here, not that we have the time to go into it in detail, but I really would love, I think there are organizations out there with letters and meetings and things trying to move on this, because there's some real implications that might be some find adverse, that might adversely affect local government, especially if those of you that are working in the energy and climate space. Okay, all right, let's go to poll. Rochelle, are you ready to launch that poll? Okay. So we did a quick smattering, but you can learn more by going to that doc. Like I said, please edit. And then this poll is asking you about future opportunities for us to get speakers for these meetings. You can, we're asking for all, which of these are interesting for you in terms of bringing them back with more time to have a speaker on it. And so you could choose your first choice, second choice, third choice, and then anything else that's interesting, we would just say fourth and beyond. Hopefully that's clear to you. So love it if folks were multitasking. Take a second, fill out this survey of the stuff that we just kind of quickly went through and is in this document. What would you like us to bring back with a speaker, you know, an expert to kind of help us understand where we might need to be tracking and participating in any of this? Okay, I see movement.
This is really hard to decide. They're all important. You're going to make us like prioritize? That's like impossible.
I know. Painful, right? It's just a matter of what we talk about first. And I know some of these are a little bit more urgent than others as well, but I'm just trying to get a pulse check. We'll do our best to meet the priorities that you guys share with us. And Tessa, I know you're one of those out there tracking all this stuff too.
We are.
Anything else you want to share here? Any of these that's really hot for you right now that you want to make sure people are listening to or paying attention to?
Well, we have to go to, we're County of Los Angeles, so we need our Board of Supervisors to take a official position, but we are going to request and oppose, of course, on AB 286, which puts the regional energy networks at risk of losing all funding. So that's a very serious threat. And then we have a few other bills we're looking at as well.
Okay, thank you, Tessa. All right, let's go ahead and we'll close this poll and we'll show the results. And then we got one last little update to give you before we release you, or at least head out to our bonus breakout if you can join us. Okay, so failed to share. Oh, did you already share? Okay, great. Looks like we're gonna have to analyze these. I am seeing maybe the budget. That's probably a really good one to focus on next round in May, as the May revised information starts coming out. And then, oh yeah, okay, a lot on AB 306. Thank you all. Okay, we'll take a closer look at that and use it to help inform our future learn. So thank you so much. It's super helpful. Please do not be shy about editing this document here. It is meant to be crowdsourced. Okay, last thing. Actually, Rochelle, would you mind putting back up your screen so we can just have Kelsey come on up and give us a quick update on the CCEC forum?
Hi, everybody. As you all know, the CCEC forum is happening in July, and I hope everyone saw our notice that registration is open. I'm sure some of you have already registered. I hope that those of you who haven't will come and register. Early bird registration is open now for the next 4 weeks, and then prices will go up, but it's always free for cities and counties to register. And that's only cities and counties. If you work for another local government, a COG, whatever, that's a different rate. So just so you know. Also, we have a scholarship program. So if you want to apply for a scholarship, feel free to do so. And we hope to see you there.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. I hope folks also saw an AB 306 local government sign-on letter that was posted here in the chat if you're interested in that topic. Okay. Well, folks, let's go to our last slide here. We will be back, not April 8th, we'll be back in May. Feel free to share this invitation with others. We would love for this network to continue to grow. We appreciate the time you spend with us. We are going to move now in for the folks that can hang around for our bonus breakout. That's what's next. And that means I get to breathe a little bit and ask you all what you want to talk about. Just to remind you what the bonus breakout is. Oh, and thanks all to our speakers and then everyone else that contributed to this conversation. Really wonderful. All right, so, oh, you want the link to the document again? Yes, here you go. Right here. Thank you, everybody. All right, so bonus breakout. We have been doing this for a while now, 15 minutes informal time. It's a space you can share an announcement, a success story, an opportunity. Maybe you have a need for something, collaborators or information or advice, or maybe you want to raise a future topic. I'm going to be quiet here for a minute and see if anything emerges. It's also a good time to take conversations into overtime. And I think what we'll do is we'll stop recording at this point. And if folks are more comfortable, maybe in some of that policy conversation in that way, this might be a good time to take that in.